Hi there, welcome back to episode 3, season 2 of All About Employment by DC Recruiting. My name's Dave, and I'll introduce the topic for today, and that's going to be question types. So being able to identify which type of question is being asked will help you give the best possible answer. So by listening to this podcast, you will be able to organize the stories and experience that you're going to use in the interview based on those categories. Think of it as a filing cabinet in your head. You have different drawers with different information in it, and by listening to the interviewer, you'll be able to know which drawer to open and which type of answer to give. So first off, I'll list down the types of questions that we're going to talk about, and then we'll get into them individually. So first are skill questions, second, scenario or conflict questions. Next, you're going to have canned answers, and I'll explain what that means after. Number 4, we'll talk about their time to shine questions, and number 5 will be questions for the employer. And at the end, I'd like to tack on a little bit about inappropriate questions, how to handle those, and what you should do if you get asked an inappropriate question. So let's get right into it here. We have first skill questions. So they are what it sounds like. I mean, the reason that an employer is asking you a skill question is to make sure that they're verifying that you have the skills that you say you have. And yes, you may have gone through a screening interview already, and you may have even, had a first interview. Maybe it's your second interview, but a different person or in your first interview, they may ask you to answer questions about a specific piece of equipment or software or something like that. So, for example, if you're a welder, they might ask you, okay, well, talk about a project that you completed, a short project, and what type of torch did you use? What type of whatever? Sorry, I'm not a welder. This is a bad example. I'm sorry. But, it'll ask you what kind of equipment you used and how you went about doing the job. And your answer will show that you know what you're doing, right? Another example could be accounting. So they might want to talk about accounting software. What have you used? What applications did you use it for? Do you know what this part of it's for? Even if you don't know how to use a certain part of software, they're looking to see maybe if you know what it's for. And then finally, another example is a dispatcher. So dispatchers for the trucking industry use all different kinds of software to track loads, and a lot of times they'll do billing with it too. So there's all kinds of software. So there's very specific questions that can get asked of an applicant for a dispatcher job. So those are the kinds of things you're going to see, those kind of questions you're going to see. And what the employer is looking for is it's verification. Employers are looking to verify that you have acceptable knowledge and the experience using the items or applying skills listed on your resume, right? So it's checking it back to your resume. Anybody can write that they know how to do lots of things on their resume, but if you can talk about it intelligently, then that's awesome. That's what the employer is looking for. So number 2 on my list is scenario and conflict questions. So here an employer is testing your time management skills and your judgment. They want to get a feel for how you would handle, certain scenarios. So some examples of these questions are the standard. I think they're standard. They tell me about a time where you had a problem with a supervisor or coworker, irate customer, those kind of things. You'll hear that a lot. Or you can have a question like, how have you handled adversity to accomplish a specific task, right? So you can get something like that. And then for the scenario kind of, straight scenario kind of questions, you can get something like, you're on the phone with a client, and then a customer comes in right after the phone ring, or right after you answer the phone, but you have a report due in like 5 minutes to your boss. What do you do? Like, how do you prioritize these things? It's your judgment. How do you handle things? So those are the kind of questions you would get there's all kinds. Okay, don't think that these are the only questions, but these are the types of questions you're going to see with scenario and conflict questions. So again, employers want to test your time management. How long is it going to take you to do some of these things? And your judgment, like what things, how do you prioritize items? We can move on to canned answers. And this is a term that I like to use with these types of questions. Now, these are questions that you should always have a quick answer for, as in they're in a can. You just open the can and let the answer out. So canned answers. Employers are looking for good answers, of course, but they're also testing how prepared you are, right? You're going to get asked these kinds of questions. There's no excuse whatsoever to not have an answer prepared. So the common questions in this category are, tell me a couple of your strengths. Can you explain a couple of shortfalls in your skill set? Those kind of questions. Strengths, weaknesses, all those kind of questions. What would a boss say about you? But those are your canned answers, right? And don't confuse these with the next category, time to shine questions. These are shorter, not doesn't have to necessarily be short, but shorter answers. And if they're saying give me 2 or 3 strengths, then just give them 2 or 3 strengths. You don't launch into your best material, if you want to call it that. That's going to be for the next category, time to shine questions. But so just to recap quickly, employers are looking, like I said, they're looking for good answers, but they're testing how prepared you are. If you go into an interview and you get asked, what are some of your strengths? And you're like, what are some of my strengths? Like, no, sorry, you should know that stuff. You should have it prepared, and you should be expecting a question like that. So as previously mentioned, number 4 on my list of types of questions is time to shine questions. So this, in the interview, this is the moment you've been waiting for. This is when you brag and you use all of your extra things that you didn't say yet, all of your soft skills, all of your best attributes, whatever, all the stuff that you have extra prepared that you would want to say that you probably haven't already said. And a little bit of repetition is not a bad thing, okay? If you've brought up some of these things, then it's okay to repeat some of it because, especially if it's a really positive thing, it'll help the interviewer remember it, right? But what is the interviewer looking for when they ask you a time to shine question? Well, they're looking for fit. That's what they're looking for at this point. So some of the questions you'll get asked, like time to shine questions, are, why should we hire you? Why are you the best person for this job? What makes you stand out above the other candidates? Those kind of questions, right? So, and when you hear a question like that, a big open-ended question like that, that is a time to shine question. That is, give them everything you got, show them how you're going to fit in with their team. And like I said, soft skills, it's also things like you're a team player, like stress teamwork so much, a lot, pardon me, if it is, if it's that kind of environment, right? So very important, time to shine questions. If you want to put a big star beside them, those are the ones that usually get people jobs. Very important. All right, so the next category I have on my list are questions for the employer. So again, you're obviously asking them questions in this scenario, but what the employer is looking for when it comes to questions that you're going to ask them, it really is about, yes, they want you to ask quality questions, right? It's like, don't ask them what their favorite color is or something like that. But they're looking for your interest in the job by the types of questions that you ask, especially if you've picked up things along the way in the interview. If you've thought to jot them down along the way, it shows that you're really engaged. But also, again, they're looking for preparedness. Did you prepare a few questions to ask them after the interview? When someone says, no, I'm good, actually, you answered all my questions. Like, no, you should have questions. An interview is a two-way street. So they ask you a bunch of questions, you should be asking them questions. So make sure you have a few things prepared. And just briefly, I'm going to go into more of this stuff after. This is just a brief introduction to what the category, how I think the categories should be organized. But you can ask them about the interview process. You can say, hey, listen, is there going to be another interview? How long do you think it would take for me to hear if I'm the successful candidate? Something like that. Simple things like PPE, like if you're like personal protective equipment, if it's a skilled trade, like, do I need my own tools? Is there anything like what's provided by the company? Like, should I be preparing to make purchases if I'm going to work here? Things like that. Those are just a couple little things. Like I'll go into stuff like that in more detail in later episodes, but just a couple of quick examples. That's all. Okay, so I did want to touch on inappropriate questions. Now, some interviewers out there aren't very experienced, and I'm not trying to make it sound like they're doing this on purpose. Like any employer that would purposely ask an inappropriate question just to see how you will react, that's pretty wrong. Most of the time, these are just inexperienced interviewers that they're not doing it intentionally. They're not asking you an inappropriate question intentionally. So please keep that in mind, and don't let your body language do the talking for you if you get one of those. Just try to be calm, and I'll explain a couple of things that you can do if you get asked an inappropriate question. So now there are a lot of ways to do this. You can look on the internet, and there's a million different ways, million different things you can do, how to deflect it, a lot of words have been written and podcasts have been done about this, but I like to break it down a little bit more simply. And really your options, if you get an inappropriate question, your options are A, answer it, or B, don't answer it. If you choose to answer it, then live with your choice. I don't mean that in a negative way, just own it, right? If you choose not to answer the question, just be firm about it. Just say to the employer that, I'm not really comfortable answering that. Can we move on? And if they push it, then, there's all kinds of scenarios there. You just be firm. Say, no, I'm sorry. I just, that's a little bit too personal. I think that I would like to not answer that question, and can we move on to something else? A lot of people think that by doing that, it's going to have all kinds of negative connotations. The employer's going to get mad and not going to hire you just because of that. And you know what? Maybe in real life, maybe that does happen. I'm sure some people out there have stories where perhaps they feel like that has happened, right? But think of it as, try to pull a bit of a positive out of it too. If it is an employer who has accidentally stepped over the line and they didn't really mean to do it, they actually may think more of you, not less, more of you, by taking a stand and pushing back a little bit. So again, inappropriate questions, it really varies where you live. I mean, I live in Canada and Ontario, and there's a list of questions that are not allowed to be asked wherever you live. I'm sure you can look it up on the internet somewhere of things that employers are not allowed to ask you. Prohibitive grounds a lot of times will be the term you can Google. But really, it's a judgment call in the interview. Either answer it or don't answer it. But if you choose not to, then be firm about it. And that's my biggest advice about inappropriate questions. And again, there's been all kinds of things written, all kinds of podcasts about how to handle this sort of thing. I go out and look at some of other people's materials too. But I just, in order not to stress yourself out too much in the moment, just think to yourself, okay, I can answer it or I cannot answer it, right? Those are your real choices. These categories, I'm going to make reference to them going forward in subsequent episodes. And I really want to dig into specific questions. So the first 3 episodes of this series have been longer than normal. So you have to listen to me talk for a little bit longer. But this one here especially is pretty important because I'm going to reference all these categories going forward when I talk about specific questions. So those questions that I sort of, just when I gave a couple of examples, I'm going to really dig into some of those going forward to see, to give you some good approaches to them. And then if you know what category they're from in my filing cabinet in your mind sort of system, then it'll benefit you in an interview. You can think on your feet a little bit more. That's the theory anyway. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope everybody has a great day. Happy job searching. If you do get interviews, then good luck. And that's all I have to say for today. So until next time, folks, have a great day.